So I'm going to start with sharing a little video of an interview with a gentleman named Raul Dubé.
I'm sorry, we're lost. The reason why the flag is hanging by a string. Okay, we're very fragile, and no one is doing anything about it, except for these people that were in this house when we survived the night.
And I understand it'll be a long night for all of you all. You just stood on those front steps. They were cheering for you. You said, "I love you guys." You guys were strangers just a few hours ago. Talk about where those emotions come from.
I mean, the emotions are there. I mean, we lead with love, right? We've lost. And I don't know, I need to say this honestly, I didn't do anything special. I know most people would have flung open that door because you lead with love. And when you lead with love, this country is exactly like this, where we're diverse and we're united. They were in there in groups being pragmatic. They were problem solving. They were sharing their fears. They were frightened. They were consoling each other. That's the America I know. And if my leaders can actually reproduce what took place in that house in unity, we're going to be a much better country.
What were some of those conversations like in the home?
Why is this happening? We were just walking around. We weren't doing anything. They had actually left. They had gone up 14th past Florida Avenue. They were talking about the routes, where they went wrong, where they went wrong, where these people went wrong. They did nothing wrong. They got detoured back onto Swan Street and pinned in. So their concerns was maybe we could have actually made a better decision about our protests. They wanted to think about how they failed and how they were going to improve. That doesn't look like anyone who's going to cower, does it? No.
Well, Raul, we appreciate you talking to us. I know it's been a long night for all of you guys. I'm glad you guys are all safe.
Be safe, everyone. Thank you.
Again, you heard.
So on June 2nd, the gentleman, Raul Dubé, who was highlighted in the video, saw a crowd of peaceful protesters being maced, being pepper sprayed, being attacked with flashbang munitions, and being arrested by police for violating the 7 p.m. curfew. And as he saw a rush of these protesters coming down towards his modest brownstone, he immediately flung open his door, and for about 10 minutes, 70 to 75 of those protesters were invited into his home to rest, to clear their eyes, to eat. And they wind up staying there overnight. And you see a little bit in that clip about what took place while they all took refuge there. And when Raul was interviewed about why he did it, he pointed to the flag, and you could see it a little in the picture there, and he says that, look at that flag and what it represents. We as a people right now are hanging by a string. We are a fragile people. And he talked about the unity and the connection that took place in his house, and how there were people, not in this video clip, but I read several articles, how people of ages from 17 all the way up to 50 of varying different creeds, race, religions, came together, helping each other, supporting each other, trying to find out how they can search themselves to do better for what they believe is wanting to be expressed in our country. And when Raul was hailed to be a hero, he says, "Oh no, I'm not a hero. I did what anybody would do. Anybody would open up their home." And I beg to differ with Raul here. I don't think it's commonplace for someone to open their door like that. For many would be fearful of the protesters, not knowing who they are. People would be fearful about their house being trashed. Or perhaps they may have a view of the protesters being troublemakers, and deserving being arrested or maced for breaking the law. And one of the things that Jesus spoke of and was so adamant about was living by the spirit of the law and not the letter of the law, the rule of law, quote unquote. Now, I know we need to have structure in this world. And so Raoul's behavior reflected living from the spirit of the law, which we would call love thy neighbor. And his behavior also reflected someone who lives from an open and pure heart, which leads right into our sixth beatitude that we will explore together today, which is, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. And like I've done in previous weeks, I've explored with you how each beatitude has been interpreted through the religious and literal lens, how it's been interpreted through the metaphysical lens, and then how we are called to live it by the wisdom teachings of the mystics. The mystical teachings call us into the experience and not just into the study of it. So let us begin with looking at the meaning as it has been interpreted through the years, through the religious, moral code, and the literal. So again, pure in heart means, like we have looked at the other beatitudes from the religious moral interpretation, means to be virtuous. Virtuous meaning following the letter of the law, following the commandments, not sinning. And in particular here, this particular beatitude, the word pure actually also means the virtue of being celibate or practicing chastity. And when it is believed in this religious interpretation, the literal interpretation of seeing God, is that when we are virtuous, when we refrain from sinning, when we follow the moral code, we will be rewarded when we reach heaven, and then we will see God, a physical being with our eyes. We will be with God. And then after Jesus's day, after Jesus's crucifixion, it became interpreted as, I will see the only Son of God, Jesus, when I reach heaven after having a whole life of being virtuous. And even others still would hope to see God or Jesus come again here on earth. So now I want to share this beatitude through the metaphysical lens as we look at the wisdom of Reverend Eric Butterworth. And in Discover the Power Within You, he writes, get your thoughts centered on the good, the true, and the beautiful, and you will see God, meaning you will dwell in God consciousness. This requires discipline of thought, for one does not easily see beauty in ugliness, life in sickness, abundance in poverty. Humans will defend their appraisal of the facts of life. However, what the physical eyes report is determined by what the mind believes. Shakespeare reflects the concept when he says that there is nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so. I want to just for a moment, before I get into what it means to what Butterworth is saying about good, the true, and the beautiful, I just want to make a distinction here, how we, in our dualistic thinking, put things in categories of good or bad. And I'm not saying, what he's not implying here is that we don't see what's physically happening, that we live in denial and put our head in the sand. But he's asking for us to have a higher sight as to seeing the divine that is outpicturing. And so when he says, get your thoughts centered on the divine, the true, and the beautiful, he's talking about the aspects of the divine, of God, and the aspects of our own divinity. So let's look at some of those aspects. God, the universal power and presence, is the single cause of all creation. The single cause. There's no other expression of life. The universal life force. And we know that we tap into that power. We are creators. I spoke about our torus fields, the energy of our heart, and that we are vibrational beings, and that every single thought, word, action, deed, emotion, it creates a vibrational resonance field, and it not only impacts us, but it impacts the world. So when we say that we are made in the likeness and image of God, it doesn't mean we're a chip off the old block, that we physically look like that, or not some platitude, you know, you're a child of God. I mean, it's a beautiful saying, I don't mean it that way, but sometimes they do become platitude. It means that we are creators like the divine, that we tap into the energy of the mysterious source of all creation by the vibration of our own creations within us. The second aspect I would like to look at is the evolutionary life force seeks order, balance, and evolution within us, within the collective, and within the world. And that order doesn't always make sense. Order sometimes comes about by deconstruction, as we on Easter and other times throughout the years talk about the teachings of endings or death, the void, the emptying of oneself, and the resurrection or coming into new life. And so we will come upon, right? And sometimes we judge those deconstruction periods, the dying to the old, as bad. Yes, they are frightening. You know, I had shared with, I think, Matt and I believe Anne, I was coming home from an energy practitioner on Monday, and I saw, you know, with everything going on, and I saw with my physical eyes a group of turkey vultures that were eating 2 deer carcass, and my immediate reaction was like, oh, that's horrible, right? And then immediately a voice said, no, it's divine. It is divine. They serve a sacred purpose of ridding, you know, not wasting anything. And so it just was just a reminder of how when I don't see, when I see from the eyes of separation or duality, I want to put things in categories. So let's look at the third aspect I have listed here. The presence of chaos, illness, and destruction is a signal that new life is desiring to emerge. Doesn't feel like it, doesn't look like it with our physical eyes, but it is if we are to believe that. And the chaos, etc., mirrors for us where we have personally gone astray, or the collective has gone astray from living from our divine nature. And in the words of Raoul Dubé, he says, again, like I said at the beginning, we are hanging on by a string. We have forgotten how to come together, how to live from love. So I believe that a new understanding a new living of divine law and order is at foot. What does it really mean for us to not just study that we are one and that all life breathes together, but to actually live it? As we look at our institutions, as I said last week, and everything we do, things are being revealed and being deconstructed right before our eyes. And as we claim and know our own divinity as creators, what will we use our power to do? To hide? To judge? To blame? Or will we use our power to go within, to seek the guidance of our heart, to be creators of healing and of light and of a new divine order of oneness? So now I'd like to just move us into the mystical teachings. A lot of this comes from a class that I'm taking, and then also from the work of Cynthia Bergall, which I have been sharing over the last few weeks. So when we look at the pure in heart, we'll see God. Here, purity in the translation of the Aramaic of Jesus's time, it meant to be singular in purpose. And that singular purpose was to be a divine conduit in all that we do. Living from that single purpose. Lots of times we can get distracted. In order to be that clear conduit, we must reside in the resident field of divine aliveness, or we will get lost in what we are seeing, picturing in the world around us. And when we live in that resident field of divine aliveness, we will see God, meaning we will glean the spiritual sight. We will know that there is divine underpinnings happening here. And we will be downloaded, directly downloaded with direct guidance. So where do we have that point of contact within us, of that resident field of divine aliveness? Now it is all around us. We can never be separate from it. But the mystical teachers such as Jesus professed that enlightenment takes place in our hearts. Yes, I know I speak about the heart a lot because I believe it to be so from my own experiences. Many of us have heard the sayings, lead with your heart, listen to your heart, follow your heart. And some of those began to become cliches as the age of reason came upon us, and everything was about the logical, the rational, everything having to be proven with our senses. And then some of the new thought, yes, it talked about our feeling nature, but primarily focuses on our thoughts, yes, energized with our feeling nature. But we've come to learn, I've come to learn in these wisdom teachings, that the heart, the mind, is to live in service of the heart. Now the intellect is powerful, it is creative and a mighty force, but divine guidance or our intellect is to be led by the wisdom of the heart. So the mind isn't of service of the wisdom of the heart. So all this heart talk, I know I've shared about heart math and all that. So I just want to look into this again. And I just want to share a quote from Cynthia Bergall, which is very powerful. When our heart is awake and clear, it can directly receive, radiate, and reflect the unmanifest divine potentiality into expression. So how can our heart be awake? How can we make sure it is clear so that it can receive and radiate and reflect the unmanifest divine potential? And this in itself could be a whole series, but for today's talk, I know I have shared some heart math with you, but today I just want to put it in simple terms. So first I would like to discuss the emptying of ourselves, the cleansing, the clearing, the letting go, and then also briefly talk about the devotional practices of awakening the heart. So clearing the clouds from our hearts, what does that mean? All of us still experience traumas, still hold on to painful life experiences or beliefs that we are not enough, so on and so on, or have had things happen to us, even inflicted by other people that maybe wasn't so kind, acts of betrayal and the such. And so we may feel resentment, jealousy, anger, fear, racism, and all the isms surface within us. And all of those lower vibrational notes of the heart, not wrong, but everything of the heart is here to teach us, is letting us know that pain is clouding our hearts. It's clouding our bodies, our minds. It's clouding everything. And so that is when we are invited into being willing to forgive. It is the act of letting go of all that stands in the way of living from our divine nature. An act of forgiveness is not always easy. I know that from my own experience. Carolyn Mace states that an act of forgiveness doesn't make sense to the intellectual, rational mind who needs to know why, who needs to get revenge, etc., etc. That is personal mind. It is a mystical act. It is one that we are asked to surrender to, because if we do not forgive, that poison, those lower vibrations, resentments, and all that cloud us and on a cellular level, within our heart, so on and so on, become like a poison within us. Not only do they cloud us from receiving that correct, clear guidance, but we begin radiating that. Not only does it infiltrate our system, but it begins, like I said, as I showed the Taurus fields last week, that we are vibrational beings. So it also infiltrates and affects the whole. And the act of forgiveness is like taking the daily inventory. It's not just something we do once a year or during the holidays, but every day, throughout our day. Okay, what fear is alive in me? Okay, when we feel racy, clammy, all of that, knowing the language of the heart, being clear, maybe what I said wasn't really, very kind. I was frustrated. Oh, let me go make amends, or, oh, let me see this person from another view. Let me surrender, what I'm angry here about, or what is my anger here to teach me? So we breathe into that process. So that is all about the emptying, the cleansing, the purifying, all that blocks our heart, our vision, our wisdom. And the next I invite you into is the devotional practice of the heart. I did just a slight tidbit of heart math where we do that deep breathing in and out from our heart, deep and slow to the count of 4. We get an image or a sense that we are breathing out from our heart space, and that brings the mind and the heart into perfect coherence. And then when we go into the silence, energizing ourselves with, calling up compassion, appreciation, all those higher vibrational feelings, we open up the heart field, the space, and we are in the greater, we are aware of the aliveness of God. And so you don't need to go through all those steps if you're not familiar and if you haven't heard a talk on Heart Math, simply just commune. Commune on a daily basis with your heart. Talk to your heart. Spend time in the silence, sensing the breath flow in and out of you. And just asking, please reveal what needs to be healed. Please, I ask and invite, what guidance? You know, I have this situation, what guidance can my heart, can the divine reveal for me in this moment? And if we are really, really courageous, we ask, what divine will, what is the divine will of my heart? Meaning the highest calling of my soul, of my heart. What is it in this moment? And just like the act of forgiveness, which is something that cannot be made sense with the intellectual mind, when we receive divine guidance, that doesn't always make sense to our rational mind. Oh, you want me to move across the country? Oh, you want me to move during the month of December? Oh, you want me to leave my job and do this work 3 years before my pension is going to come due? So on and so on. But the more we follow that guidance, we live in the flow, and things synchronistically that we could never imagine occur. And the more that we live and seek the guidance clearly from our hearts, the more we will hear it more clearly. Because when we are like, no, that doesn't make sense, we squash it. Not that we squash it, it's always present, but our understanding of it becomes duller. And so, my friends, living from a pure and clean heart is not always easy. You know, we do walk between the worlds of the physical and the spiritual, two different realms. In the physical, we see the outpicturing of illness and destruction and all things that I talk about. But surrendering to the guidance of our heart and following the guidance we receive is the most powerful thing that you can do. It is also a very personal experience. It is a courageous and faithful act. And each one of us are called by the divine to serve in different ways. For Raul, in that moment, it was to let in those protesters. Each of us will receive that guidance in a very different way. So we must be willing to let go of our personal attachments, of our logical thinking. And we are also called to desire with our whole heart and being to serve a greater cause than our own wants and needs, which is really the life work of the master teacher, Jesus. And I'd like to end today with a quote by Barbara DeAngelis, and then a question that I leave you with. And she states, if you are free, if you are feeling any kind of strength or hope or light, you must not forget the hopeless, the lost, the forgotten. Do not turn away from darkness in this world. Oh no, bravely turn toward it, see it, feel it, and then defy it with your choice for love. And my friends, I ask you, what will be your choice for love today? Only the wisdom of your pure and clear heart knows. Blessings of love and of joy.